Let's say, for example, the church wants to empower the young people who are members, who are unemployed. The church wants to empower them with maybe business training, tools to start business, right? That's like a business, boot camp, a sort of mini MBA, right? That's a project. Now, let's say this project is going to cost maybe 20 million naira, right? Then the church, having identified a foundation that supports religious organizations, can then put together a proposal showing how this money will be spent, showing how lives will be changed, and showing the cost per participant. See, that's a ratio that you need to remember today, everybody. Cost per what? Participant. Grants are very competitive. So if, for example, let's say 10 churches apply for the same grant, and maybe one church is going to spend 20 million to reach, let me press my calculator here. I want us to do these maths together, cost per impact. If you can reach your calculator, that's also fine. So let's say a church is asking for 20 million, and then they want to spend this money to empower 2,000 youths. That means the cost per participant is 10,000 naira. If you are able to work out a lower cost per participant, maybe a lower cost of 5,000 naira, and you're able to show more impact, you are going to win the grant. Yes. Yes. So cost per impact is a very important metric, right? You need to be able to do more with less, right? Sometimes funders get to a point where they are confused, where about 5 or 10 organizations are doing similar things, similar projects, right? And have similar strengths. What would they use at that point? It's cost per impact, right? So you have to be able to do more with less. So that's it. So just to recap, first of all, the church has to identify foundations that fund religious organizations. And then number 2 is the church has to look at its internal needs and then look for those foundations whose projects align. How will you know that? Check their website. You will see the people they funded in the past. So that gives you an idea of how it can be done. But it's very, very possible. Another thing is the church can also just do CSR projects, right? CSR projects that are not even maybe focused on the members, that are probably focused on the wider community. Maybe this Arable community, for example. Maybe you've noticed like an issue in the... I'm just saying this, right? Hopefully there's no problem like that. But maybe there's a drug abuse problem in the community, right? The church can organize an intervention where they bring together like counselors, psychologists, people to rehabilitate, right? Or maybe even launch a rehabilitation center, right? Like build a building, do all of this and all of that. So those are some of the avenues. I hope I helped.
Yeah. Thank you. So in the same similitude, if you have a business or you run a social enterprise and you are thinking of this kind of issue, one of the things he said is you need to identify people or organizations that offer this kind of opportunities, and you tailor your needs to their needs. And then when he was speaking, there was something he said that caught my attention. He said, grant funding is all about secondary audience. People who need your service but cannot afford it. So like he said, most of those folks might be timid of coming to church, but the church can what? Go out there and extend this service to them and meet their needs. Same thing applies to you. There are many of us here that run small business and are wondering, how does this apply to me? This is where it applies to you. There are a lot of people around you that need your service but cannot afford. And this is where you come in, you apply to an organization that can give you a grant, and you get a grant to extend this service to the folks. Can you give me a round of applause, please? Okay, so we have a question. It says, all right, cool. Thank you. So if you want to ask a question, can you raise your hand up if you do? All right, so we have one person. Another person? You want to ask? All right. All right. So how many persons in the audience want to ask apart from R? Okay, so can we give the mic to R to ask a question?
Praise the Lord. Okay, my question is this. So we're talking about the hair, concerning the hair aspect. First, you said the requirements to get a grant is your business is to be registered, right? And you said you have to be a manufacturer. If you're a manufacturer, you have a bigger opportunity of getting a grant. So now in the case of hair, I'm talking about hair in particular. For instance, if you, let's say you get into this importation state and you get the hair like by bundles or that way, and then by yourself, you wig them. Or you, let's say you get them in bulk and then you employ people to wig them, and does that make you qualified? Like, does that make you a manufacturer in a way?
Yes. Yes, because you're adding value, you're transforming it. Do you understand? You've added something to it.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so the next one is this. So in the case where you've not registered your business, okay, let's just say you started the business of recent and you've been trying to raise money and you're not able to raise money. For the buying and selling part, you buy from someone to sell to your customer, and that case. How do you, what are your chances at all? You've not registered the business. You're still struggling on how to register it, but go up this Nigeria, you've gone to this person, no investor, nobody wants to invest, no matter how you try to.
Funders are not stupid. They will not give you money they don't think you can handle. So the formula most funders will be willing to give you, meaning that your ability to attract grant funding is a function of your capacity. Right? Some funders are willing to give you up to 100 million a year. You can win grant funding of up to 50 million easily from one person. That does not mean you cannot win 50 million from like 10 different funders, which is what a lot of startups do. They will apply up and down. Do you understand? They will apply here, apply there, apply there. So you can only win realistically about 50% of your annual revenue. For an NGO, that will be your expenses. Do you understand? So it means that the way to really win a lot of money in grant funding is to first build your capacity, right? That means that the grant funding you can apply for very easily is like 600,000, which is very small. So when you win small grant funding, use it to build your capacity. Reinvest in your business so that your business grows to a point where you're probably doing like 20 million a year. At that point, you're able to apply for what? Grant funding of about 10 million. Does that make sense? There's a particular grant we won, Anzisha Prize. They came to the office to come and see that the things that you people said you are doing, are you really doing them? Do you understand? So for you, I think like you have to figure out like how to get registered so that you're able to apply for more opportunities and then reinvest in the business as you are growing to grow, because you don't have to refund the money. You're not paying back interest. So grant funding is very useful for growing rapidly because there's nobody to, repay money to. So I hope I helped. All right, thank you.
Thank you. If you want to apply for a grant, you need to make sure you're solving the right problems. And it means that you have to evaluate your ideas, because grant funding organizations don't just want to give you money because you have a solution. They want to really make sure that they can be able to measure your impact, right? And so whenever you are thinking of ideas, don't just think of the solution. Oh, I want to do this. Think of the problem that it will solve for the secondary user. Thank you. So there's a question. It says, I have a startup, a farm, and I've been thinking of how I can access a grant. How can I position myself to get a grant as a farmer?
Okay, so first of all, there are so many grants for farmers, right? And so I think the first thing is you have to look out for those opportunities, right? Check out the websites, look out for those opportunities. That's step one. Step two is, I hope that these slides will be shared with members, right? So that you can go to the checklist. There's a checklist, right? Go to that checklist. Make sure you have those things in place, right? And then next step would be to apply. Now, the thing is this. If you are very good with writing, by all means, apply by yourself. But if you've been applying over time and you keep getting rejection after rejection, then you probably should hire a grant writer, right? If you hire them the first time, second time, third time, right? By the fourth time, you probably will have learned how to do it, so you may not necessarily need their service. However, what I have found is that the people that hire grant writers the most are organizations that have won grant funding before. Is that not funny to you? Is that not funny? Do you know why? Because they know the amount of work that is involved. And they would rather pay somebody to take that weight off their shoulders. They would rather pay somebody. But if you cannot afford to hire a grant writer, it means you have to learn how to write better. Right? So it's very possible if you're a farmer. And I think one other thing you can do is look out for organizations, funding organizations that fund people like you. There are people that are doing what you're doing and are getting funded. Look out for organizations like that. Go to their website. Go and read up on all of them, right? So the things you learn from there will help you to put together an application.
Right. Thank you. To follow up about learning, when you were talking, I was thinking we live in the age of AI, and there's a tool called GPT. So, as young people, how can that assist us to write grants better?
Okay, I like this question they're asking me, right? So, funny enough, when ChatGPT was initially released, right, the month that there was a particular month this year that our sales at Grandmaster dropped, just a few months after ChatGPT, right? And then we're trying to investigate what happened, right? And then we're like, it seems like our customers are trying to do this by themselves. And we're like, okay, we shall see. 1 month after, our sales rose again. Do you know what happened? People were served breakfast. Let me explain. ChatGPT is only useful to the extent to which you know how to write. If you don't know how to write and use ChatGPT, you will write nonsense. So ChatGPT is a tool that is useful for people who already have at least some level of competence, right? So it means that if you don't know what a good grant looks like, there's no way ChatGPT will help you create it. A lot of times ChatGPT makes mistakes. It even lies a lot of times, called hallucination. Do you understand? Right? So I think my advice would be that be very careful with ChatGPT so that you don't, get out nonsense, right? Be very careful with it. If you know how to write, ChatGPT can help you fine-tune. But if you do not, I think pay attention to first sharpening your writing skills so that you don't submit nonsense and, to you, it seems like sense. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, so in summary, saying you need to build your capacity to be able to attract what you want. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. So we have a question here about what can you describe some of the apps on storing financial record and how it works? Then the second question is about.
Sorry, can we take it one by one so that I can just answer very quickly and then we can move on? Okay, so apps about storing financial records. The one we use is called Wave, but Wave is no longer open to Nigerians, right? We got in very early, but now as a Nigerian you can apply again. But we use Wave actually. That's what we use. Now there are other options. There's an app called Zoho, Z-O-H-O, Zoho, right? Where you are able to impute your financial records and all of that, right? There's another app called Bumper, B-U-M-P-A. They even have a mobile app that you can use. And so the way the apps work is that you are able to enter your daily income, right? Daily revenue. You're also able to enter your daily expenses. Now, the advantage of those apps is that you will see graphs. They give you breakdown. You see graphs. For example, I just gave an example of how, sales fell in a particular month. How do you see that? It's very hard to see it from your bank account. Even though from your statement, yes, you can have an idea. But with the graph, you see when sales drops, when there's a spike, you will see it. Right? So those apps help you to be able to visualize and also able to provide historical data, right? And some of those apps are very cheap, right? Some of them are even free. And they are as cheap as some of them will be asking you to pay maybe 2,000 naira a month, 5,000 naira a month. Very, very affordable. Some are even free. But it's very important that you check out apps like that. I think you can check out Zoho, Bumper, and other ones. Try them out and then select the one that works for you.
All right, thank you. Second question is about grants. How to assess grant givers, the organizations that give grants to people, maybe mention 4 or 5 ways on how to get that. You already mentioned, I know you really talk, you mentioned about opportunities.org.
Opportunitydesk.org, opportunitiesforafricans.com. There's also funds for NGO.org, right? And you can just go to grandmaster.xyz and sign up for our newsletter, right? And in fact, Grandmaster is working on a software that matches people to funders that they qualify for. It's we're going to roll it out in the next few weeks. We've been working on this for over a year, right? Because the number one problem that we face, even internally, is how to recommend grants. You know that if you just go to sites existing sites like Funds for NGO and all those sites, right now what you have to do is you have to be searching one by one, right? But what people really want is something that can look at what they already have, the state they are, and recommend what fits them. That's what we're working on. But that's not ready yet. It's going to be ready in a few weeks. We are beta testing right now. But for now, you can use those solutions. At least they would meet your need.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Additionally, you can go to google.com and put, if you are a farmer, if you are a business owner, put the title of your business into a bracket, into a, what's it called? quote and put how to get funding and put equals to. Google will create a sorted list of grant funders based on historical search for your organization. So I think you can try that out as an additional option. So can we give the mic to the person? Thank you.
Praise the Lord. Sorry, my name is Mr. Okon. My question comes down as our grandmaster speak with us. I was I don't want to speak, but it's important that I speak out. I discover in Nigeria we have so many challenges boiling down to security matter. And I'm a security consultant. Early in my life, I do buying and selling. But I think very around my 27 years and 30, I find out that, like he said, oftentimes business crashes. And where do you crash to? You go back to your village, or you go back to your home, or an uncle is not interested in your story. Now, I devise a plan. What do I do next? I go to ride Okada. And I was riding this bike in the city of Lagos for 8 years. And yet we resort to a government who come to crash Okada again. And I go back to my base. What do I do next? I now go to study and learn how to secure Nigeria. And now as a security consultant or a security man, how do I source fund or to get funded? Thank you very much.
All right, I was trying to type the question. Okay, so thank you very much, sir. So the thing is, security is a very big industry in Nigeria. Why? Because Nigeria has a serious security problem. I think we can all agree, right? I remember there was when this Abuja Kaduna train, when people were kidnapped. How many of us remember that, right? I was supposed to be probably on that train or like maybe one day before or probably on that particular train, right? There was a cancellation at the last minute. And I was thinking to myself, like, I could have been on this same train, right? So, who knows? If I was on that train now, of course, I would not be here today, right? I'll probably be dead. People will be mourning and, right, things like that. So, Nigeria has a serious security issue. Now, the question is, what aspects, of the industry, where do you want to play? The industry is wide. Where do you want to play? Is it CCTV? Is it cybersecurity? Right? Is it local local intelligence, gathering? Let me give you an example. A friend of mine came up with like a tool. I've forgotten the name now, but that tool is like an alarm where it's in your house, right? And if you have it, your neighbors also have it, so that if you press an alarm in your house, your neighbors hear the same alarm and people come outside, right? And he has been winning grants all over the place. Why? Because that tool is a very good tool for like local intelligence and for alerting your neighbors. If there's a problem in your house, instead of shouting, "I have to go by me," you press the button. Everybody in your area knows something is happening, right? And at least, one or two landlords with guns, can fire. When I was growing up, I remember that because I remember that sometimes thieves would come to the area, right? The area where I grew up. And then someone in the area would have to call my dad and say, "Oh, something is happening here." And then my dad, had a gun, he's late now. But then he would just fire a gun in the direction of the trouble. And then the thieves would run away, right? And then some landlords that had guns in the area where, that was what they did, right? But imagine a case where you cannot even make a phone call. I even know that there are some times where it's already late. You understand? You can't make a phone call. So tools like that. So you have to think about the approach you want to use. Do you want to build an hardware device? Do you want to maybe create a new kind of CCTV? Do you want to help local people, their intelligence? You have to figure out what is the best way to play in this industry. You have to find an entry point. When you then find that entry point, of course, your work is easier then. You need to build a prototype, right? You have to show evidence. It's very hard to get grant funding for idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Ideas are almost useless. Execution is everything. If you have an idea, find a small way to prove that what you have in your head works. A small way. It might be something small. It might just be serving 2 people or 3 people. When you prove that, then it's easier for you to win grant funding. So I hope that I helped. So please, can we take all the questions? One by one, then I'm happy to take them.
We have just some questions left. So to add to what he said, because most of the questions here are tied to that direction. So I want to reiterate one specific tagline he said today. He said, I'm reading again, grant funding is all about your secondary audience. People who has a need, but may not afford it. So like you said, you need to be able to, maybe you're a business owner, you work 9 to 5, you need to identify how you can be able to go for a need, turn it into a service or a product, and validate if this thing you've identified is really needed. And then you can go apply to grant organizations, and then you can get funding towards to push a change in society. Thank you so much, sir. So there's this question here asking about individual grants for individual, and I'll try to summarize it. It says, we live in a world where most of us wants to work in a tech firm. And you go out as a young person, you're learning maybe cybersecurity, you're learning how to code, and how can you use all this knowledge to position yourself to getting a grant that can make you become an expert in this field, and in the long term, you can get a high-paying job?
Okay, so the best vehicle to win a grant, like I said earlier, is an organization, right? Whether it's a for-profit or non-profit. So one thing you can consider is you can consider joining an NGO or starting an NGO. Now, the reason why I would not push too much for starting an NGO, especially if you're a young person, is that Nigeria has too many NGOs, right? So the problem is not the quantity of NGOs, it is the quality of NGOs, right? So I'll be very careful with just recommending that go and start your NGO. No, I think it's better to, as a young person, join an NGO, right? And then help that NGO win a grant, right? But if the advice would be different if you're maybe between 30 and 40, right? The advice would be different. If you're within 30 and 40 and you have some experience in the field, you might as well start an NGO, right? It's easier for you to win. How can I explain this? Think about it as a vehicle, right? As a vehicle. Think about it as a car. Grant funders like some certain vehicles. They would rather fund an organization, an institution, than an individual. Why? Because as I explained earlier, an organization is traceable. It is very hard for an organization to just disappear on the face of the earth. But for an individual, it is very easy for you to disappear. So for a young person, you either should join an NGO and help them, right? And if you are probably above 30 and you have some experience in that field, you might as well start an NGO, right? Because those are the vehicles. Or if you already have a business, those are the vehicles that can attract grant funding.
Any other person from the audience? Okay, sir.
Hello, sir. I'm aware that private health sector is one of the highest beneficiary of grants.
Is who?
It's one of the highest beneficiary of grants.
Who?
Private health sector.
Private sector.
Health sector, rather.
Health sector.
Health
Okay.
sector.
Okay.
I want to ask this question. But this grant is always to federal government, local government, and public health sectors, excluding private sector. Is it possible for a private health sector, like a private health care provider, to
Win grants.
win grants?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There is a company called Health Tracker. If you are in the health space here, there are two companies you should look out for. Health Tracker, there's another one called Life Bank. In fact, Life Bank won a Jack Ma grant, $250,000. That was about 2 years ago or so, right? Life Bank. Now, I don't know their finances, but I doubt that, I doubt that they are making maybe millions of dollars in revenue. Do you understand? So, if organizations like that are winning grant funding in the healthcare space, it's very possible. If our healthcare is... See, there are two things that apply to nearly everybody in the world, right? Two games that we play, health and money. Two games that we play, health and money. For the money, a lot of times, I mentioned earlier, we usually pretend as if we are not playing that game until maybe there's a tragedy or something. A lot of people don't realize that their score in the game of money is very, very tiny, right? So my advice to you is, generally, I know I'm drifting out of point, and this is deliberate. Don't wait until there's an emergency for you to realize that, you are not doing well in the money game, right? Because think about it, for example. What if you had a medical emergency right now, right? Would you need to start doing a GoFundMe? Would you need to start calling family and friends, right? So it's very, very important. Now, to the healthcare space, it's very easy for you to win grants in the healthcare space because essentially, the mortality of everybody is staring at us in our faces. Think about the last time you were very seriously terribly sick. How much money did you spend? Healthcare is expensive. Please, can we all agree that healthcare is expensive? How much is CT scan? X-ray? Drugs? I've had a surgery before. right? And I know how much was spent on the surgery, right? In fact, sometimes they will say, when you do one test, they'll say, oh, we are not seeing what we expect to see. Go for another one, the same test. Go for another one, right? Now, if you're an healthcare provider, the question is, what exactly, where are you playing in that space? For example, look at all these people that provide radiology services, all these guys that do, X-ray, all of those things. Do you know those guys can attract major grant funding, right? By just providing subsidy on their services. Because a lot of those services, do you know that sometimes you go to hospitals and you see people begging for money to buy drugs? How many of you have seen people like that? They'll be begging for money. Sometimes they're begging for as low as 500 naira to buy a drug because they can afford it. So healthcare service providers have to look out for their secondary target audience. Who are the people that need their service but cannot afford it? That is the people you should be targeting with grants. Grant funders want to change the world. You have the people who need change. Did you hear what I just said? Grant funders want to change the world. You have the people who need a change in their lives. So it's a match made in heaven. Regardless of the road, wherever you are in the healthcare space, if, for example, you're an hospital, you're a clinic, right, there are people who need your service but cannot afford it. What can you do for them? What can you do for them? Can you subsidize, their payments, right? Can you even render it free of charge? Imagine, for instance, that you're an healthcare provider or maybe you're an hospital and you render free healthcare for underage girls who get pregnant. Free healthcare. Do you know that a lot of these underage girls that get pregnant, do you know they are usually treated as outcasts in the society? Neglected. Nobody wants to take care of them. But you can take up that or yourself as an hospital and say, we want to take this up. Right? We want to. So think about it. Who is your secondary target audience? Who are those people who want to use your service but cannot afford it? Then you can design projects for them. So yes, you can win serious funding. Serious money.
I put your hands together for Mr. Lugeno. On the case of Live Bank, I kind of work in the startup space. And what Live Bank does basically, what they do is, we all need blood, right? When we all have blood in our body, right? And most often, when hospitals are in emergency, what they have issues is how to get blood to the patient. And Live Bank decided, we can help move blood from where it is being stored to the hospital within a short period of time. So they created systems to get blood, people who need blood, and help hospitals to save lives. And that is the story behind their success. So basically, like you said again, grant funding is all about secondary audience, people who need your service but may not afford it. And that solves, it gives you like a open gap to think until you can find something meaningful to build your grant funding idea on. All right. We'll be taking just 2 more questions from the audience and last one on the paper. Any other person from the audience?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good morning, church. My name is Charles. Concerning the grant funding program you talked about, sir, I've never heard you made mention of profit making, you growing to establish more, even when you get grant or you have a go-ahead in the grant you get into. So I want to ask, is it a freelance service? Is it a profitable business? Is it just let me live kind of business? Or can you just put more light if we can go into that kind of field and make more money and be blessed or be more established? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm still struggling to understand the question. But sir, it seems you understand the question. So
Basically, what he's asking, if I understood him, is what is the return on investment to the grant giver and the person whom the grant is given to? You've not talked about any gain. You keep telling us how we get grants. Should we go and squander it? Should we use it? What should we do with it? And how do those people track what they've given to us?
okay, does that capture it?
Yeah, partially.
Okay.
I'm still making reference to, with all this, what is the profit margin? Because with
Profit
all
margin
the,
for who?
for you getting a grant for a business.
Oh, okay.
Or even an NGO.
Okay.
Yes, I can be an NGO.
Okay, are you saying how do you make money from a grant?
Yes, like after the investment,
Okay.
Because if I'm getting, like you're talking about an NGO service for an hospital
Yes.
that took few responsibility to lesser people,
Yes.
you know, you are contributing, you are spending more, and you are giving more, even with the grant being given to you. So, in years, in days, what are the returns as a profit might? Because I've never had any profit since you've been talking.
Oh,
or
okay.
this is growth or
Okay.
increments. Yeah.
I mean, please, can we put our hands together for him, please? He's following the money. Okay, I like that. Now, this is where like organizations make money from grant funding. In a grant, in the budget of a grant, there's typically allowance for salaries. There are people that will work on the project, sometimes as their full-time job. So sometimes you have like program managers, program officers, and sometimes you have to hire specialists. So you have to quote the salaries. Now, the salaries you are quoting are like markets, like global, like salaries, right? So it means that, for example, somebody that probably is earning like 100,000 naira, in that budget, if you're quoting a budget, you probably will be quoting like 250,000, right? Now, are you lying? No, because you are paying them for that project. You are not paying them as, you know, staff in your company, right? So sometimes organizations make money on the amount, you know, that they quote for, because even the person that will supervise the project, like the program manager and all of that, they all get paid, right? So they usually make money from that, right? Sometimes it's also by executing some part of the project. So let me give an example. Sometimes maybe in the project you say, oh, we need specialists, we need psychologists, we need this, we need that, right? If they're already in the organization, it means the organization will not necessarily have to spend money. So that's how you get money from that. It's sometimes about doing some part of the project that you can do by yourself. And other times it's about like the money that is paid for people to do the job, right? So there are different parts of the budget. Some other times it's the monitoring and evaluation so there's something called monitoring and evaluation, where the funder wants to know that you're spending the money on what you actually claim to be spending it on, right? And so it's from sometimes maybe the project is going to, you need $500 to monitor and evaluate, right? And then you hire somebody who is able to deliver it for maybe like 2/3 or a lower price, right? Now, what you need to do is this. You need to sometimes, and in fact, what is recommended is, if there is an excess in your budget, you need to report it and say, oh, we quoted this for this, but we got it at this lower price. However, if it's payment for maybe the program manager, the people that did the work, no, that's money for the organization. You're not lying. You are simply quoting the fees that will be paid to the people that are working on the project. So typically, that's how you get paid. And also by doing things that you can do internally without paying external consultants for. So it's absolutely legal. What is not legal is you lying. Do you understand? You lying, especially people who lie that they did something and they didn't do. That's even the biggest one. So imagine, for example, an NGO gets money and you say, oh, we are going to feed street children. We're going to feed 1,000 street children. And you don't do any of that. And instead you divert the money and then somebody travels to Dubai. I mean, those kind of people will rot in hellfire. Do you understand? Right? But if you are quoting money and it's maybe payments for the people that are working on the project, you're not lying, right? That is. So as much as possible, you want to be very ethical, you know, about, you know, grant reporting. But typically, if you're asking how is money made in grants, that's how it's made. It's mostly about the personnel, people that are working on it. You charge above market rates, you know, global rates. And then the funders will understand because they also don't expect you to be broke. In fact, some of them will even ask you to charge management fee. So some of them will even ask you to charge like a 5 to 10% management fee for you to manage it. And then they expect that you use the remaining 90% to execute the project. So that's how you make money. So if you execute a project well, as an organization, you should be able to make at least 5 to 10% that comes directly to the organization, right? So in some cases, up to 15%. If it's a consulting grant, you may make up to 20% because if it's consulting, it means the consultants are internal. You're not spending much money externally. So I hope that I explained how money is made in grant funding. I hope that helped.
Thank you. So to the last question now, it says, I'll try to summarize it. We're talking about grant funding for small businesses, for social enterprises. So how about creatives? How do they get to gain from grant writing? I'm a creative, I do photography, I do graphic design. How does this come in?
If you're a creative, then you probably should consider registering a business. Why? Because that is the vehicle that you can use. You know, if you're creative, I don't want to say NGO because, I mean, you're a creative, you're already making money. Let me give you an example. The Ministry of Communications right now is doing a project where they want to train 3 million Nigerian youths. I don't know if you've seen that. It's all over the internet. And they are looking for trainers right now. So if you're a creative and you have a registered organization, you can apply. But you cannot apply as an individual. No. Do you understand? You need to start thinking in terms of vehicles. There are some opportunities that you cannot access if you don't have the right vehicle. I learned something called instrumentation from banks and bankers. Is there any banker here? Any banker? Okay, one person. Fantastic. When you go to the bank, and maybe you want to probably cash a check, or you want to maybe withdraw money, right? They will ask you which instrument. That was the first time I first said instrument at the bank. If you go to a bank with the wrong instrument, even though it's your money, they won't give you. You need to have the right instrument. Let me give you an example. So if you go to a bank with a withdrawal slip, that is the right instrument. But if you want to withdraw your money from the bank, and you go with the wrong instrument, let's say you go with a deposit slip instead of withdrawal, even though it's your money, they won't give you. You need to have the right instrument. So it's the same way with grant funding. In order for you to win grant funding, you need to have the right vehicle. So if you're a creative, consider registering a business so that you can access opportunities like this. Because let me tell you the truth. A lot of times people think that, you need to be very big to win a grant. No. Sometimes small companies knock out big companies when you're applying for grant funding. Yes. Right? Because some of the grants that we've won, it's not by our size. It's the quality of the ideas that we have. Right? So just have the right vehicle and then you can win. You can apply and win.
Can we put your hands together for